Hello, welcome back to my space. So I'm reading Smart Money Woman by Arese, our fave. So we're currently in we're in chapter 6. We finished chapter 5 yesterday, and we saw that Zuri dodged a major bullet. She almost lost her job, so yeah, she dodged a major bullet. And her mother's house got burnt down. So yeah, there are emergencies that can literally happen at any time. So the lesson was that we need to have emergency funds. We really need to have emergency funds, girls. We need to get that. And we shouldn't put the emergency funds in assets that are not easily liquidated. Yes, we should just put it in savings or where we can easily get it. And we shouldn't also invest emergency funds into high risk investment like buying stocks and buying shares and stocks and all. Yeah. No, they can crash and then you lose your emergency funds and anything can go down. So now, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel because it's both our channels. Okay, so I'll get straight into reading after blabbing. So chapter 6, money goals. The rain had caused immense traffic. She was 15 minutes late for the meeting, and even though she had texted Mr. Tunde 20 minutes ago to explain the reason for the delay, she knew he wouldn't be pleased, and she would probably be fired if her presentation wasn't convincing enough. "I'm so sorry I'm late," Zuri said as she looked apologetically at the delegation from Zuma Capital. There were 3 of them, a woman, Folake, and 2 men, Shola. I don't know why, excuse me, this is side note. I don't know why Shola is spelled Tsole. I don't know if I should pronounce it as Tishola. I think I'll do that. Back to reading. There was a woman, Folake, and 2 men, Tishola and Ebuka. She had done as much research as she could on the 3 of them last night. Folake was a very impressive young lady. She looked to be in her mid-30s, had an MBA from Harvard, and had started her career at Morgan Stanley as an analyst, worked at Aberage Group as an investor before she joined Zuma Capital as a junior partner. Ibka was in his 40s, married with 3 kids, and had worked at Goldman Sachs for 18 years before he left to start Zuma Capital with Shola. Tishola Priwe, was you'll get why I said soon. Tishola Priwe was 38, went to Cambridge, then Stanford, had worked in several investment banks including Goldman Sachs before he moved to Nigeria to work for the biggest indigenous private equity firm, which he became notorious for structuring and executing some of the biggest deals the company had been part of in the last 5 years. He was a bit of a legend in the finance community. Zuri had watched several interviews of him on CNBC Africa, and he exuded a brash confidence that broadened on cocky. She found him very attractive. He wasn't handsome in a pretty boy way though he was good looking, yes, but it was his swag and the way he carried himself and spoke as though he knew he was the smartest person in the room. Intimidating but sexy. Ooh! Azuri looked up from trying to get the projector to work so she could start her presentation without any further delays. She saw him staring at her with an impatient look on his face. Her heart sank. He thought she was incompetent before she had even begun. "We would appreciate it if you could hurry up," Tishola said coldly. We have several meetings to get to, and we are already 20 minutes behind as it is. I'm so sorry, sir. Let's begin, Zuri said. Zuri could feel Tishola watching her as she walked them through the features of the two developments Richmond needed capital to complete. She tried to sound upbeat and confident, but she knew she mostly sounded nervous. Tishola watched Zuri's presentation. She hid it well, but he could tell she was nervous. She smoothed the non-existent wrinkle in her skirt just a bit too much. Still, there was something in her that made him want to challenge and unsettle her even more. Maybe it was the fact that she looked like the sort of girl who usually got away with a lot of things because of the effect she had on men. She was hot, but this was a business meeting and she had already irritated him with her tardiness. He had 3 meetings after this and a flight to catch at 6 p.m. He wasn't going to let anything slide. Women like her had to learn to use their brains and not depend on their good looks. Listen, madam, enough with the features. We get it, Tishola interrupted. I have 3 more meetings after this and a flight to catch at 6. Let's get to the important stuff, the numbers. Have you done an independent valuation of each development? What have been your profit margins on the sale of flats in the area historically? What kind of rental income can we expect if we decide to co-invest? Zuri, so what Tishola is trying to say is that we are concerned that the return on investment on this deal might be too small than what we are used to, Folake interjected with a look at Tishola. Zuri was irritated, but tried not to show it. She hated it when someone who was clearly older than her referred to her as Madame. He obviously meant to be condescending, but she knew she had to keep her cool and be professional, so she looked at Tishola and smiled. Bring it on. It was clear he thought she was just a pretty face, with no in-depth understanding of the deal structure, but she had done her research and even called a few of her friends in the private equity space. This was a good deal for Zuma Capital. They had several deals in Nigeria that would pay out in the long term, but needed to be invested in some projects that will also provide them with some liquidity in the short term. I apologize, Mr. Priwe. I'm only trying to familiarize you and your team with the features of the development, so you could get an understanding of our USP and put the valuation in context. I'll skip right to the details. As Zuri talked through her slides, she explained the more than decent profit margin that was expected from the sale of 10 of the flats and the rental income from the 5-year lease they were negotiating with one of the largest telecommunication firms. As you can see, they will both be high revenue generating projects upon completion. Unfortunately, between the currency crisis, falling oil prices, and the general turmoil in the Nigerian economy, the cost of both projects shot up by more than 30%, and without funding from the bank or additional funding from our international investors, we want to limit their exposure to the Nigerian market. At the moment, it proved very difficult to complete either development. I understand that Zuma is usually interested in much larger deals, but this could present 2 opportunities for you. For starters, it will provide you with liquidity in the short term because, unlike the real estate development deals that haven't even broken ground, we are 80% in completion, so the revenue from our rental income will start rolling in almost immediately. The other upside is the capital appreciation on the unit that we don't sell. The return of investment on the deal is decent, and investing in this small project can act as a test case. Working with us on this relative short-term project will be an indication that whether you should buy the group or not. Thank you, Zuri, Mr. Tunde said. Ebuka, what are your thoughts? Well, the young lady had made quite a compelling case, Ebuka said with a weary smile. Obviously, like Folake said, there are concerns about as to whether the expected returns are what our while or not. But give us a weekend to discuss it, and we'll get back to you early next week with a decision and hopefully a term sheet. He winked at Zuri. As Mr. Tunde ushered the Zuma Capital team out of the office, she caught Tishola's eyes at her, looking bemused. She sensed that he wanted to say something, but then he looked away as though he had changed his mind. There was something about him that made her uncomfortable. She couldn't decide if it was his aura or the fact that he was just so damn confident. Ooh, I love myself some confidence. When Mr. Tunde came back in, Zuri couldn't quite read the expression on his face. Well, he said finally, I guess that went alright. Now we'll wait to hear back from them. I hate this part. I'm sorry, Zuri said. Maybe if I had given a better presentation, they would have given us an answer right away. Mr. Tunde shook his head. I asked you to step up your game, Zuri, and you did. I'm rather pleased with how well it all came together, especially considering the short-term frame. Thank you, Zuri said, though she knew she wouldn't be able to feel truly great until Zuma has gotten back to them with a yes. Later, Zuri found herself at the airport just in time to hear that her flight to Benin had been delayed. She had done her best to get to the airport early so she could avoid the beast that was Lagos traffic, especially on a Friday. The traffic wasn't as bad as expected because she got to the airport with an hour to spare before the boarding started. She was hopeful that her journey to Benin would be smooth and without a usual hiccup. Apparently not. She began to put her things together so she could walk the length of the departure lounge and exercise her now numb legs when she spotted a familiar face walking in her direction. For a second, she couldn't place him, but as he drew nearer and his face came into focus, she realized it was Tishola. He was no longer wearing his sharp designer suit from their meeting earlier this morning, but it was definitely him. Instead, he wore a white well-tailored traditional outfit that had a slim fit and displayed his lean swimming shoulders and all 6'1" of him nicely. She avoided his gaze and attempted to feign ignorance of his presence as he walked past. Hello again, madam. No sock luck, she thought. Hello, sir, Zuri said, forcing a smile. Where are you off to? Abuja? Shola asked. No, I'm going to Benin, but the flight has been delayed for another hour. Oh, I'm on the same flight, Shola smiled. What's happening in Benin? Visiting family, or is this a work-related trip? Family. I'm going to visit my mom. There was a fire and her house had been damaged. Wow, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is she okay? Shola asked. She's fine. Thankfully, she got out of the house in time. She wasn't injured, just some smoke inhalation, but the doctor says she'll be okay. Tishola nodded. There was an awkward silence. Zuri moved to say her goodbyes. Then Tishola said suddenly, you should come and sit with me in the lounge upstairs. The chairs up there are much more comfortable. Besides, he added with a slight bemused smile, I don't bite. Of course you don't. There was a part of Zuri that couldn't imagine what she wanted to be talking for an hour to Tishola about, but she still felt numb from the waist down after sitting on the uncomfortable metal seat. At this point, the prospect of sitting in the air-conditioned lounge with leather chairs was rather enticing. Great, she said, trying to sound unbothered. Before she could say anything else, Tishola took her tiny suitcase from her as they walked up the stairs to the lounge. Zuri smiled at the unexpected gesture. Some Nigerian men didn't really do the whole gentleman thing. She couldn't remember the last time a man had helped her with her bags or opened the door for her, especially not one that could be categorized as a Lagos big boy. It was refreshing. As he settled into the seat in a little corner of the lounge, he asked her about her family, about work. He was surprisingly easy to talk to. There was no uncomfortable silence, and he seemed genuinely interested in everything she had to say, including the mundane stuff. He seemed like a completely different person from the man who had confronted her in the meeting earlier that day. "So did you grow up in Benin?" Shola asked. "Yes, so I'm a Benin girl. Though and true, even though I can't speak the language," Zuri laughed. "That's disappointing. I think every Nigerian should speak at least one native language. Otherwise, our culture will be lost." "I speak 4 Nigerian languages: Ishekiri, Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo. They come in handy when you are trying to close deals," he winked. 4 Nigerian languages? Wow. Way to shame me," Zuri laughed. "So, what does your dad have to say about you not being able to speak Benin?" Tishola asked. "Not much. He died several years ago." I'm sorry, I laughed. That was very dark of me. But the reason I laughed is because he asked what does the dad have to say about it, and then she said not much. That was very, I don't know, that was dark of her too. So not much. He died several years ago, she said. Her smile dimmed a little. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," Tishola said. "So, who looks after your mom in Benin? Who is going to help us sort out the whole issue of the house? Do you have insurance?" "Insurance care," Zuri said, laughing. "Yes, insurance to cover the damage of our house." Zuri felt a little defensive. No, I didn't even think of that. Besides, insurance is a waste of money in this part of the world. They don't pay, and they won't pay anything significant." "That's a myth," Tishola said. "If you are on the right insurance plan or pay your premium regularly, insurance is a great way to protect your assets. I think it's an excuse that most Nigerians give themselves for not wanting to pay that premium when times are good." He was quite a superstitious society. We are quite a superstitious society. So we never like to think about what if my house burns down or my car has an accident. The mentality is usually, God forbid, it won't happen to me. Tishola laughed. But the reality is, sometimes bad things happen to good people. At least if you had some insurance, it would help to cover some of the cost, even if it's not all of it. So how are you going to cover the cost of repairing the damage? I have no idea. My plan was to go to Benin, get someone to assess the damage, and then see what my brothers and I can contribute together, Zuri said. "More my brothers do, because I'm extremely broke at the moment," she laughed, slightly embarrassed that she had said that out loud. "Fine girl like you, broke, how so?" Tishola teased. Zuri told him about her mounting debt, inability to pay her service charge, and rent that was looming, her issue with car, her challenges at work, and her fear that she could lose her job at any minute. She was self-conscious because he was practically a stranger, and she didn't want him to think that she was the type of Nigerian girl who was unloading all her problems before she asked for a handout. This is a side note, yeah. I was thinking the exact same thing, because how would you just meet someone and start talking about all the problems you have, a guy to even begin with? Girl. So, back to reading. When she finished speaking though, she felt better. This was the first time she had unburdened herself since her money wahala had started. Tishola observed her absent-mindedly as she relayed the story of how she almost lost her job and all her money problems. She had a strange effect on him, and he couldn't quite place a finger on it. She was attractive? Yes, not conventionally beautiful from my eyes, but definitely pretty. Beyond that, she was somewhat more. He found her brand of awkwardness sexy. Ooh. He usually wasn't a talkative, but there was something about this girl that made him want to tell her his life story, his goals, fears, his dreams, and hear hers. She was intelligent and witty, but seemed to lack direction. She was one of those people who just allowed life to happen to them because she obviously didn't have a plan. He wanted to laugh at what she considered money problems, but he thought the best of it. She was obviously in a vulnerable place in her life and quite sensitive about it. There was a part of him that wanted to shake her and tell her to wake the hell up. She was focused on the wrong things. She was weighing herself down with the problems instead of focusing on possible solutions. She was brilliant, but she wasn't maximizing her earning potential. The debt she was mourning about was inconsequential in the grand scheme of things if she played her cards right. Earlier that day, he had watched her sway him and his partners in a new direction in the conference room. His first impression of her had been wrong. She had a unique perspective and a power of persuasion that was rare in someone so young. She could certainly be putting her sales skill to better use instead of sitting in a cubicle crunching numbers all day. What do you want? Shola asked. What do I want? I don't know. You must have some reason. Clearly, you're intelligent and witty, but you lack direction. Ouch. You're one of those people who just allow life happen because you don't have a plan. You need to wake up. You're focusing on the wrong thing. Zuri looked at him in confusion. I am? Yes, you're focusing on your problems, not possible solutions. I'll admit, when I met you earlier today, I made some stupid assumptions because you are good looking, but you have since proven me wrong. You have a unique perspective and a power of persuasion, and it's rare in someone so young, but you're squandering it. You are not putting it to good use, and you are yet to understand money as how it works. First, you have got to figure out what you want. The question made her uncomfortable. Luckily, she was saved when the announcement that the flight was ready to board and they could begin getting on the plane. But of course, Shola made sure that his seat was right next to hers. And once they were sitting, he looked at her expectantly, still wanting her answer to his question. What do I want from you? Zuri asked hesitantly. Jesus Christ. You get the drill. So Zuri asked as her mind wandered back to their conversation. No, from life, Tishola laughed. What do you want from life? Zuri wasn't quite sure what all this was about. I don't know. I guess I want what every normal person wants, Zuri said this hesitantly again. Oh, Jesus. Zuri said, like what? Tishola probed. I really need to check the pronunciation. Hold on, please. Okay, I'm back. Like what? Tishola probed. And what does normal even mean? Trust me. What I want out of life is probably different from what you want out of life. The problem is, most people focus on earning paychecks so they can survive and not focus enough on articulating what they want the money they earn to do for them. Zuri stared at him blankly. I don't understand. Everyone wants to ball now. We want to live in fancy houses, fly first class, shop for all the bags and shoes, etc., etc. Typical Nigerian, Tishala laughed. Yes, we all want to ball, as you say, but given that no matter how much you earn, your resources are limited. If I asked you to narrow down what you want to 3 things in life this year, what would they be? I honestly don't know, Zuri said. I've never really thought about it. I guess the goal has just always been work hard, get promoted, earn more money, and the rest will work itself out. I guess the goal has just always been okay, I've heard that. And therein lies the problem, Shola said. In fact, the money problems you are having now are just symptoms of an overarching problem. The real issue is you haven't articulated what you want the money you earn to do for you. So you let your resources be dragged in several directions that are not necessarily yours. If you had specific goals and a financial plan, you probably wouldn't be in this situation. Let me see. You are the type of person who, if you had 100,000 in your account and your friends asked you to go on a trip to Ghana tomorrow, and you know you have bills to pay in 3 months and no savings, you would go, even though you haven't planned for it. Zuri laughed. Yep, I'll probably go because you only live once, right? Tishola laughed with her. I'm not saying you shouldn't go on holiday with your friends, though. I'm just pointing out that you are probably an impulsive spender, hence your debt. I'm saying you need to get clear on what your goals are so you can spend and earn intentionally. I like that. For example, what are your priorities this year in terms of money? Once you are clear on those things, it will be much harder for you to spend on the things that aren't as important to you. One of my goals this year is to finish building my house in Banana Island. So because of that, I've had to sacrifice a lot of things. Zuma gives board members an allowance for a new car every year. So typically I get a new one. For the past 2 years I haven't. I've also had to give up some of my annual boy trip to Marbella because it's usually a huge blowout when we spend a lot of money on yacht and champagne. He laughed as Zuri rolled her eyes. It's a lot of fun and a great way to let off steam because we all work so hard. But this year I have to skip it because I understand that it is a temporary sacrifice to make in the now so I can achieve my long-term goal of building a house, cut back on spending, save and invest more aggressively. Building materials have become more expensive, but I'm certain it will be finished by first quarter next year. That's nice, Zuri said. So my point is, yes, it sucks that you are in debt, but you earn enough that you can come out of it if you are disciplined and willing to make the spending sacrifice in the short term so you can wipe out the debt. Also, are you maximizing your potentials? Are there other ways you could be putting your skills set to use so you can earn more money? I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. Well, think about it. In fact, I have a small assignment for you. Will you do it? Are you now my teacher? Zuri laughed. She saw the sober look on his face and she nodded. Okay, this is the exercise I did years ago in business school, but it changed my life, Tishola said. Do you have something to write with?